Good morning, everyone. Calling the Technical Advisory Committee to order here on May 2nd. I want to turn it over to Jordan Chandler for the roll call and determination of a quorum.
From Spotsylvania County, Paul Agnello.
Present.
Rodney White. Jacob Paswick. Mohammed Ben Amor. From the city of Fredericksburg, Jamie Jackson. Here. Bassam Amin. Mike Craig.
Here.
From Stafford County, Alex Kodiak.
Here.
Brandon Brown. Brian Council. From King George County, Nick Miner. Kimberly Wilson. From Caroline County, Mike Fincham. Craig Pennington. From Federal Highway Administration, Ivan Rucker. From the Virginia Department of Public Transportation, DRPT, Amy Garbarini. Here. From the Virginia Department of Transportation, Michelle Shropshire. Here. Stephen Haynes.
Here.
Jim Ponticello. Dan Grinnell. From the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, PRTC, Bob Schneider. Joe Stainsby. From the Virginia Railway Express, VRE, Christine Hefner. Nick Ruiz. Here. From Fred Regional Transit, Aiden Cork. Craig Reed. From GW Ride Connect, Kate Gibson. Lee Anderson. Here, the quorum has been called and the quorum is present and roll call has been conducted.
Thank you very much. The next item is the approval of the agenda for today for the TAC. Are there any comments on the agenda? Changes?
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4 is the approval of the April TAC meeting minutes. Did anyone have any changes or comments on the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So we're up to item. Oh, yes. Okay, sure. That is noted. We'll go to item number 5, review of the April 18th Policy Committee meeting with Ian.
I'll do this very quickly, so I will fly through them. If you have any questions at the end, please do that. If you could scroll down. My administrator's report as usual, and you can find it online. We always upload it within a day or so of the meeting. BRE, our wonderful colleague up here, Nick Rui, made a presentation on what's happened with COVID, the ridership trends, and some of the similar presentation that you had at the TAC. The outer connector history and how an idea becomes a project. Steve Maines and Michelle Shropshire made 2 brief presentations just to update the policy committee members. You'll remember that we have 1 or 2 new policy committee members who were recently elected and won't particularly know the history. And also, policy committee members requested to know how do you turn a mega project from an idea into an actual constructed project? What are the steps you have to go through? Smart scale round 5, that was just a very brief update. CMAC, we just presented what the TAC has. I've taken the approach to not share new information with the policy committee that the TAC hasn't seen if I can at all prevent it. It does happen on rare occasions that I have to do that because of timing. Sometimes the timing just catches up with us, but I really try not to share the new information with them on complicated things like that until it's been here. The UPWP, the draft, that was updated. So that was one where the timeline caught up with me. I had to give them the updated version, and so we did build in a couple updates. And you'll see today, hopefully we have the final version. We needed to update that because we needed to start the 30-day public comment period, and I didn't want to start the public comment period with financial information that was completely out of date, because after the TAC meeting and before the policy meeting, both BDOT and DRPT gave me revised financial numbers, which substantially changed how we were going to do the financials. So I updated that before we started the public comment period. But you've got all that today, and it only gets approved at the next meeting. Plenty of time for you guys to look at. The the special executive meeting, that was appointed in order to expedite the UPWP approval before the GWRC meeting, and the problem is, it's that problem that we have in the calendar every so many months where the time between two policy committee meetings isn't 30 days, and we have to do a 30-day public comment period, so that screws up the calendar. So we asked for a special executive meeting and for the policy committee to approve the executive with the authority to approve the final version of the UPWP 2 days or 3 days or a couple of days after the policy committee meeting. So the policy committee will see the UPWP again at their meeting, but that isn't 30 days from the start of the public comment period, so a couple of days later the executive will need to meet to just have the final approval and adoption. But obviously policy committee can make any changes at their meeting anyway, so that pretty much will be covered. The bylaw discussion was tabled. The chairman wasn't able to attend the meeting, so that was postponed to a further meeting, but we did get a letter from Federal Highways making some comments on the proposed bylaw changes, which we did give to the policy committee. Done, Mr. Chair.
So I just had one question on item 8B from the policy committee with the outer connector. Did the policy committee give any direction to staff or take any action on that?
No, it was, there was a presentation, I should have said this, there was a presentation by the chair of the TAC, which fell under member reports, so it doesn't look like a separate agenda item, but he made a presentation which you have in your pack today. Right. And at the end of that presentation, the request from Mr. Scharfenberg was that he just is providing this for information purposes. He would like to go back to the CTAC and come back with a concrete proposal of how to take the matter forward. So the policy committee kind of left him to elaborate further with the CTAC and come back at a later date. Is that accurate?
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the public comments. Are there any members of the public, either kind of in person or online, who wish to speak?
Thank you very much. Yes, Lisa.
So up there on the screen, just a couple of public comments we did receive from members of the public on the UPWP. They relate largely to particular road projects and not really the kind of comments that we would amend the UPWP for. It's rather what we might use in our studies and in our funding allocations to projects, I guess, but not actually to it, because the UPWP doesn't contain particular roadway endeavors unless they are within a study. So we just note them, share them with you, but there's nothing I don't think we should be doing about the UPWP regarding those two comments.
Very good. So we'll continue and go to item 7A, the outer connector. So I guess I'll start and say that I asked that this be put on the agenda just because it's been discussed kind of at FAMPO and CTAC recently, and what I actually wanted to do and start in Jordan, I don't know if you have the ability to bring this up, but just the Spotsylvania comprehensive plan, just a thoroughfare plan. Zoom in a little bit. So if you start basically where the dotted red line basically is at Route 3, and then you kind of trace that south, that's Chancellor Road, and then basically there's another kind of large dotted line kind of below that, goes to Gordon Road, goes south. This is the southwest quadrant of the outer connector and the comp plan for Spotsy. And you see it goes basically over to Smith Station and Spotsylvania Parkway, and then that continues basically over to Route 1. And there's basically a connection to 17, and 17 is slated to be 4 lanes out to New Post, going all the way to the Caroline County line. So basically there's conceivably a outer connector on the southern half in Spotsy, a 4-lane facility. It's not a freeway, it would be limited access, but it's something that's in a comprehensive plan and parts of it are built today, or I'll say are being planned to be built by developers. So I guess if you go back just to the presentation that VDOT did, and maybe go to slide 4. So these are some of the concepts from the outer connector that kind of came about in the early 2000s. And I know later on, like if you go to the TAC presentation, sorry I'm making you jump around here, but they had a couple of concepts for roadways. And I guess I had a question on this. I know the CTAC, like for the northeastern quadrant of the connector, I see it there kind of in Stafford, portion that's in the Stafford comp plan, then going down a little bit into Spotsylvania. But for the northwestern quadrant of the outer connector, what did the CTAC recommend?
You see the line in Culpeper and Orange County, the blackish looking line. I can't see so well from back here what the color is, but yeah.
Just burgundy, blackish.
Yeah, so not the full part of it, but that section through Orange and Culpeper, and then not going back to where it goes back to, but they rather, Hank Schaffberg, the chairman, is interested in a line which carries the brown line on straight north to cross the river again, which is a Rappahannock, I think. Anyway, and it goes up to US 17. So in other words, that brown line would carry on straight up there. And if you scroll down to 1 or 2 more slides, I think it's shown in there. That one up there. Well, he didn't actually draw the line, but that brown line is the proposal to carry on straight like that across the river and up to US 17. That's his proposal. And I think his idea is to try and avoid housing. So I think that was his proposal.
So I guess, like, is the Stafford CTAC kind of proposal, is that supported by Stafford, like in the comp plan?
I'll have to go back and review our comp plan, but I would imagine we probably mentioned something about the outer connector in there, but we don't have any funding or actual plans to actually develop it. We've studied it quite a bit about extending from Centerport down through like Berea Church to 17 and possibly making a crossing there, but we just never gotten anywhere with it. And now CTAC has come back and proposed this more kind of eastern outer connector through Stafford connecting down to White Oak or something like that. So I'm going to take a look at that and see if we can kind of route that through and avoid as many homes as possible, but you're certainly not going to avoid all of them. You're going to have to impact some homes. So
the piece of the outer connector in Stafford from like exit 136 to about 17, like, is there a funded project to build that piece?
no,
And are there any plans to fund that piece?
not within the next 10 years or so.
But the eastern part, like if you go back just to what the CTAC had there for the eastern part, that's in the comprehensive plan for Stafford, and Stafford is going to fund that?
I'm not sure if it is or not.
There is a roadway indicated, I think, in your comp plan, but it is not exactly the same as the one Mr. Schaffenberg has drawn. It's slightly different. It comes out at a different endpoint. It starts in the same place at the end of Centerport Parkway, but his proposal doesn't quite follow the route that's in your comp plan. It's a slightly different route, and it ends up in a slightly different place on, I think it's 208, is it? Somewhere like that.
Just those, kind of just like that stuff.
I have a question, if I may ask, Mr. Chairman. Are we to understand then that this is a recommendation of CTAC, or this is a recommendation of the chairman of CTAC?
Neither. To switch into legalese for a second, the CTAC voted to a majority vote to allow the chairman to go to the policy committee to discuss these proposals. So there's no like, we're voting that this is our plan. We're voting to give you a mandate to go and discuss these proposals on behalf of CTAC with the policy committee. now going back to the CTAC, and I don't know what they'll decide then. But the idea originates with Mr. Scharfenberg, the chairman. It's his idea and his proposal. The CTAC had a majority vote to allow him to continue the discussion with the policy.
For the eastern bypass, is any portion of that in King George?
Not the one he's proposing. The line that he's drawn is entirely within Stafford County, which happens to also be his county. The Scharfenberg is from Stafford. But Fampo currently doesn't have a view on this. It's like a new discussion has begun at the CTAC, and the policy committee has started to say, well, okay, what does that look like? Where do you want to put it? How would you fund it, and how would you put that in the CLRP without upsetting the projects that localities have got into the CLRP? But there's no kind of decision on anything.
May I ask a question? What is the pink delineation on the map?
That red line was it's the red or the purple?
I'm talking about the pink land mass,
Oh, that's conservation,
okay.
conservation.
The city-owned conservation easement. I thought maybe that was the case. Okay, it's just interesting to know.
That's the river, and the city owns on both sides of the river.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
So the discussion from the city was, in that conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, but the localities had asked if there's an opportunity to cross at any point for the city. And based on city leadership, city council discussion, I think they were going to come back with, if there is a location where it would be, not saying that they had they were for or against that crossing, but people asked if there could be a crossing, where would it be?
The city doesn't own any of the land along the river, though, east of Fredericksburg, right?
No, I think what you've got up there in pink is what we own. That's why I brought it up. I just make sure that's on the radar.
So say with like the original outer connector concept was like a beltway, freeway road. Like what's emerging is something more like a 4 or 2 lane road, maybe going around part of it. But I said with the spot C part, we would have the southern part, like kind of that half of the circle. And I'll say if that northeast kind of part, if that were to happen, there'd be basically a 3/4 kind of ring kind of road around Fredericksburg. So that maybe could be a good improvement that could still allow kind of people to get around and avoid 95 or Route 1 if there's an issue. I know just over the years, just a lot of controversy has been on that northwest quadrant piece, and I'm not sure if there's an easy resolution to that, but I guess I would like to offer that even if that doesn't happen, there could be value in that northeastern piece. So that's all I had. I just wanted to get a sense from the other localities as kind of what you thought about this, given that there had been quite a bit of conversation with FAMPO and CTAC about it.
Yeah, I mean, as staff, we generally don't take opinions until, we've listened to the politicians and we've listened to the TAC, and so I've just avoided taking any public opinions on it. It's obviously our meetings are also open to the public and the media, so I'm not going to speak on behalf of FAMPO and then have the newspaper say supports or doesn't support this one or that one or the other one. FAMPO doesn't have a position, so I'm not taking a position. I mean, I have private views, but they're not the views of FAMPO.
It's okay, we'll ask them after the meeting. Just as a quick note too, and again, tell me if I'm saying anything wrong. If this is a project that does move forward in the future, it was brought up that this does need to be in the constraint plan. So, the item was, what are you going to move off if this goes on? So I don't think we're there yet. I think there's still other work to be done if we're even going to consider this as a project. But just for TAC members who were not there, something has to go. And that might be a very tall order. So. The
other thing that I should perhaps say is that we have two other studies which are not building an outer connector, but which may impact what Pampa decides about that. So one is the Route 3 pipeline study recommendations, which include some comments that Route 3 is reaching the end of available inexpensive options to improve the traffic flow. And we're getting to the point now where an expensive construction project will be required to really improve the traffic flow. And some preliminary designs were done by the consultant on the pipeline study. Secondly, in the Pampa East-West Mobility Study, we happen to have the same consultant working. And so we've asked them to use the model to investigate the two other projects which have been, I think, formally decided by both localities. The city has, in their Area 1 plan, inclusion of another access point to Central Park from the I-95. I think you, Mike, were part of that decision. And Pennsylvania has, I think, in their comp plan, or at least it's requested in the CLRP, an access point to the I-95 at Harrison Road.
Yeah, I think the Harrison Road interchange is actually in the constrained long-range plan.
It is.
It's also in the county comp plan.
It is. So those two projects are actually in county and the city plans. And so we've asked the consultant to model those three things. A big expensive upgrade on Route 3 or these two interchanges, which also affect the traffic flow that you're trying to move, right? So they're not building an outer connector at all, but they are the one that the interchange in the city into Central Park area could potentially have been the CTB's one alternative to the outer connector. If you remember that map that we showed of the CTB alternative that Stephen presented at various committees, it shows that one alternative there. Go back there, the one on the left. You see there, if you build that access point to the I-95, then I think it's a green line, then is theoretically possible. I'm not advocating for it, I'm just saying that was the one alternative to an outer connector was to build those two things. Those two options were at different times adopted by the CTB as we approved this. So the recommendation 1 and recommendation 2. So those are also in the mix. I'm not advocating for any one of these options. I'm saying these are items that are being looked at because Route 3 has become a gridlock.
Can I ask a question? This around all the place. And I was shopping this weekend and had to get all and I was wondering, is Pennsylvania looking at any possibility of doing a connector road from out the mall to Harrison?
Yes. That's all I'll say.
Just wondering. If you go behind the mall, Ian, there is a roundabout, and it's already got like a leg there for it. I just happen to be going around that way. I wonder what they're going to do.
I recall. Isn't that, what was the chap's name from Stafford that has his own plan to connect over the...
Oh, yeah, Joe Brito.
Wasn't that a portion of Brito's plan or not? I don't know. Anyway, Brito wants to connect Celebrate Virginia North and South with a bridge, doesn't he? I don't know whether Stafford took a view on that, but anyway, that's
I don't think we ever did anything with it.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'll just quickly say basically on recommendation 1, I know that we have a couple of our current board members are very against the Spotsylvania piece of that. And I think that since that was conceived about 10 years ago, I think a Lidl is blocking kind of part of that getting to Route 3.
Then take out the Dunkin' Donut that y'all approved and just put it there.
You want to tell Mr. McLaughlin that?
Take out, stop approving this stuff. Take it out and put a road there. We do it all the time. So what's going to go around all these other things. And now you're gonna bring in other people from Culpeper and Orange trying to agree on something. Y'all can't even agree something here.
Well, I'll just say basically the position that Spotsylvania has with Route 3 is the best thing to improve it is a Harrison Road interchange and then basically 4-laning Harrison Road from basically 95 going to the west all the way to Route 3. And also that from Salem Church to Route 3, all of that is either 4-laned or is in the process of being 4 lanes. So that's our county position.
So the county's not going for the Culpeper Orange album?
No, they're still interested in that, but I'm just saying basically with regards to that little kind of green piece right there, that's something the county would not support today. Sounds good. So let's forge on and go to 7B, the CMAQ and STBG project selection process update with Jordan Chandler.
Just thanks to Jordan for putting this together. It was a real head scratcher. And I just thanked Susan for helping us find additional funding, but of course that meant we had to redo the list somewhat. And we also had all sorts of cost estimates change multiple times during this process. So we've done the best that we can. One of the queries we had was, why are the cost estimates different to the ones in the SIP? And I believe the answer is because the SIP draft locked in March, and we got new updated cost estimates through VDOT in April. So we've taken the latest cost estimates in April, not the ones in the SIP, so there is a difference. Bear with us, it's quite complex.
So on the first slide, it's just sort of a review of what we said last time. Our progress initially was we received the modified call for projects, our 3 active transportation projects. We held the screening calls, scored and ranked applications, and then we discussed with each locality and VDOT the best way to use STBG funds. And then back in March, we came with the first version of the allocations. And then from March to April, we received feedback from VDOT, also the new draft FY23 SIP budget, project cost updates, and that there was some funding in the previous year to allocate. So then we came back in April to you guys as the TAC with a recommendation of how to use those funds. And then we applied that recommendation. So for CMAQ,
Go back one second.
we used the cost to fully fund the requested amount for the FY23-28 call for projects. So all of the applications that you received were funded to the request amount that you guys asked for. We've worked to fully fund the remaining requests from the Spotsylvania New Transit Lease Commuter Parking Space application and use the remaining funding to partially fund the Fred 3 bus replacement project. And then for the HIP funds, we were told by VDOT that we can't have the funds in the out year, so we moved them back to the previous year column when they were able to be viewed. And then so we took the money off. For example, we had initially made an allocation to Onville in HIP in the out years, so we just swapped that for STBG and brought the HIP money back over since we couldn't have that allocation. So we just did a like-for-like swap of STBG and HIP from what we initially allocated. And then we used those funds like you guys suggested for the FY2050 LRTP closeout and then the FY22 Freight Summit project. That's how we used those funds. And then for STBG, we removed the overfunding that we had initially put in March based on what we thought the cost estimate was at the time. So we removed that overfunding. We also had additional funding that we could put onto Onville, Route 1, exit 126 southbound, and then Garrisonville Road. And then lastly, we have some issues with the cost estimates, so those were changing. The first question that we had is some of the smart scale projects fund cost estimates have changed, leaving them underfunded. And then it was brought up that who is responsible for those underfunded amounts based on SAMPO putting money, a locality putting money, or smart scale having the money. So that's just one question that's going to be discussed. And then we also got a new cost estimate that had increased the amount that was needed for the VCR Trail Bridge. So we incorporated that and used CMAQ money to fill that need since we want to have all the projects on the list filled and no need remaining. And then additionally, there was one request from GW Ride Connect for about $5,000 for their technology needs. They are not able to use DRPT funds to buy computers, desktops, monitors, things like that. So they requested that all of their computers are no longer able to update to Windows 11. And I can refer to Lee if she has any other things to add. So that's why there's an amount in the regionally significant. We wanted to put that in a holding space before we actually allocated that project because we hadn't discussed that with you guys. So we just wanted to clear that with you before we actually allocated it to them. If you scroll to the last slide of the presentation, there's a letter from GW Ride Connect with the specific request. And then lastly, just the next step, if you go back one slide. We're looking for endorsement today of the plan, including the GW Ride Connect addition, and then we will be bringing this to policy committee, and then in June, the CTV will approve. Over the summer, we're going to work on doing the history and document tracking of these projects so we have a very clear foundation of how these projects got what funds and what changed through the years, and then begin the FY24 to 29 cycle in the fall. I can take any questions on any of the sources, anything like that.
Before you do questions, just a couple of items from my side. That summer, the one that's listed there as summer, what we're doing is we're spending an amount of staff time, a significant amount of staff time over the summer to build a history per project. Because we had one or two difficulties in the past year where nobody can, like the $50,000, forgive me for raising it again, but actually, the honest truth is, none of us actually knows which project the money was shifted to. We know it didn't disappear, but it was put on a different project, and none of us have a record. So the way to fix that and prevent it happening in the future is we're going to start a history per project. Here's the project UPC. Where did it get money? Did we take money off and move it somewhere else? Well, we're trying to keep a history now so that when somebody asks a question, like the new FAMPA administrator asks a question, we actually have backup history on our server as to what happened with each project. So it should clear up that, it's not that anything went wrong, it's just that when you only have a spreadsheet, you don't know what happened between spreadsheet X and spreadsheet Y, you just know that there's now not money there. See, and we want to be able to, a spreadsheet is not the perfect answer to every problem. It doesn't give you that history, so we're going to create history. A couple of quick items. Project number 10, I believe, is now complete, and I have a question for Susan or VDOT. You declared it officially open and complete, and would you just give us advice on...
Harrison Road in Lafayette?
Yes.
That thing just closed.
Yes, so the question is...
Yeah, it'll be anything left on there, you won't see for a year.
So we should just leave it on the list like it is now?
You have, the contractor itself has 6 months.
To send you...
To finish out building us and get everything, and to file any claims for that.
Okay, so we will leave that item on the spreadsheet for now. Secondly, we have a request from Spotsylvania to fully fund project number 11 with the funds that we were going to allocate to project 13, because they believe that project number 11 on the list is more urgent, and they'd like to get it completed. So because doing that wouldn't affect any other jurisdiction, it's shifting funds from one Spotsy project to another Spotsy project. We as a staff would be okay with doing that. The TAC is okay with that. So if you could just tell me whether you're happy with that, we'll make that adjustment. And then if you are happy or not happy with the $5,000 for the GWRC computers, need to give us an indication as to whether we should put that on the computers for GWRC or whether we should not. If you decide not to, all we will do is take that last $5,000 of the HIP funding and on one of the projects which is not 100% completed, but we're running out of projects that are not 100% completed that can take HIP funding. There's a limited number. But we can. We do have one or two that we can do. So those are my questions for you.
So I guess with the GW Ride Connect, I wanted to propose something a little different, which would still meet the needs. One is basically, I think they should be given CMAQ and not HIP. But two, just with the allocation for 125 for FY '27 to change that, to instead be basically 25,000 per year in CMAQ for kind of 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, so that they would have funding available for small needs that arise. I am a little concerned with just giving kind of $5,300 to GWC staff just because of the optics of it. There wasn't a request from basically the CMAQ or the STBG kind of process for that, so this would still kind of address that need and give them the money they need.
So
And then kind of in the fall, basically when there's a call for projects, we can look at funding for GW Ride Connect as well as other needs.
Okay. Just say that first suggestion again, because I didn't completely get it of how you would propose.
So the main part of the change would be basically with GW Ride Connect. Now they have 125,000 in CMAQ, but it's way out in FY '27. To change that to basically, they don't get any more money, but they get the money kind of earlier, right? 25,000 basically in FY '23, and then 25,000 for 24, 25, 26, and 27. Still have the same amount of money, but then they have CMAQ for all those years, and if they need to buy computers or they need to something else that they can only do CMAQ, they have the flexibility to do that.
Okay, in order to do that, we would need to shuffle a couple of other projects. Can we do that, do you think?
I don't know off the top of my head.
The problem with it, of course, is that you've got the CMAQ allocated in certain years, and so we need to get CMAQ off of a project that has it in FY '23 and '24 in order to shift that to GWI Connect, and then give that particular project money in FY '27. I mean, it's probably doable, but it might, one of the problems we have is that VDOT needs us to allocate money in the correct year, and they don't like us to give money early to a project that's only going to need it 7 years later, because then it sits there, and then Susan gets harassed by central office for having this money that just parked there. But
There's only one project on here that is even out that far, that starts in previous and ends in '27, and that's 208 in Lafayette.
Well, here's maybe a simpler version of that. Maybe just take 25,000 of that and give it to them for FY '23 and leave the other 100 in FY '27. And basically with the Route 1 Market Street project, there is CMAQ there that could be switched.
are you okay with that?
You want to do that? Take money off the market.
Give GW Ride Connect 25,000 CMAQ off of Route 1 Market Street. Reduce the allocation out in FY '27 from 125 down to 100. And I guess the HIP funding for FY '23, I don't know, would go somewhere where it's needed.
Yeah, we would just stick it onto one of the projects that isn't fully funded, and I think there are only 2 left. If I recall, the one is, can Fred Bus get HIP funding? Fred Transit?
Yes, they can get RC, if they can get STBG, then they can get HIP.
Okay, so we could probably stick it on that project. I think there are only 2 projects that are left that are not fully funded, so.
Or we can do a simple STBG HIP CMAQ.
Okay, we can fix that.
So you get CMAQ, and then we put the HIP on a project that has STBG, and we take the,
Yeah, so we'll make that.
from that, yes, because then it will get too much.
So let's just clarify and ensure that everybody's happy with that. The proposal is to take $25,000 of the FY '27 GWRC allocation of CMAQ and move it back to FY '23 and swap it out on a project like US 1 Market Street, I believe.
Yes.
So that we bring it into earlier years, and then that would push Market Street's funding into FY '27, the 25.
No, we cannot go to FY '27. It can't go to '27, get ready to go to F.
So where would we shift it? That's the.
And I've said this, when you only do shifting around '27 money, there's only one project.
Which is?
And that's 208 and Route 1, Lafayette. that you have, that has money in previous all the way out to 27.
So we would need to do it on that one.
You'd have to do it on that one.
Okay. Would, are there
But
any?
that doesn't have CMAQ funds in FY '23, so, I mean, we could move, but it's
Previous.
just, yeah.
It's got older funds though?
It's got previous.
Yeah.
If it's got older funds.
So wouldn't it be easier just to give them the $5,000 from the HIP?
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to the TAC. I don't have an opinion. I'm trying to make everything.
I mean, I think rather than going through and trying to do the whole exercise and redo the whole spreadsheet again, like, let's just give them the $5,000 in HIP money and be done with it.
So I think, I mean, normally 25,000, shifting that around with kind of a program that's, 25 million, you can find a way to do it.
I'm confused.
Yeah, what's the text?
Paul suggested that instead of giving a one-off allocation out of the blue, we rather take money that's already been allocated to them in FY '27 and swap it for an earlier year so that we can give the money that's already approved for them.
Where was the $25,000 from the HIP money come from? Is that going to take?
No, it's
Okay,
not.
here's a simpler version.
Give them $5,000 and they'll be done with it?
Basically, that figure, the 5,300 figure, basically give them that in CMAQ in FY '23. Basically move the HIP to some other project that needs it, then reduce the FY '27 by that figure of 5,300.
And that gets us where?
Basically gives GW Ride Connect CMAQ funding that you can use for the computers now.
Okay, so
Basically
what
something
you're
that-
saying is you're saying that the funding should not be HIP or SCBG, it should be. Well, that's easy. No problem. Are you in agreement that the 5367 amount? Are you in agreement that
So
the 5367 amount is good? Because all we have to do is go straight down to Market and take that HIP money and throw it to Market Street and take out CMAQ and put it up on regionally significant, and we'd be done with this process.
And then he's then proposing to remove that amount from FY '27. That will then need to be allocated again.
Okay, you must have changed it, because I don't see 27 money. What, this 120? That's 125? Oh, okay.
Proposing to remove the same 5,000.
So the
Why do we need to leave this money so?
Okay, we just talked about $25 million, and we're talking about 5,000?
money for FY '23 budget.
Well, they
have gone without CMAQ for a while, so, we would enjoy having the money for the computers that we
Okay,
need.
so how much have you got left in number 3? 103,685. Isn't that?
That's like $65,000, but that's specifically set aside for their strategic plan.
Okay. So they're wanting more CMAQ
Can
new stuff.
you actually bring up the letter, Jordan, and just kind of make it big? The request was for $5,367.
Okay.
Computers, if you can just make it bigger.
So are you saying you want more?
It's for us that are vision challenged here in the back.
More CMAQ?
Yeah.
No. We would like to buy computers before they fall
With the
apart.
5367.
They've got two screens that don't work anymore, and
They can have the computers, I would give out city money to make this go shorter. It's like, this is too small of a problem. We talked about $25 million, and we're talking about $5,000.
Yeah, why don't we just swap out the money on one of these projects that has both, and we move on from here? Because you've got, on Market Street, we've got everything. We got HIP, SCBG, and CMAQ. So it can easily be swapped out, and they get the 5367, and then if they need additional funds from, in CMAQ in the future, then I think they would then send us a letter requesting that, correct?
Yeah, so there was the one issue of using CMAQ instead of HIP, and then the other issue was basically the optics of this. It didn't go through the normal process of requesting the funds. And I think kind of we want to do what we can to make GW Ride Connect whole, but I mean, just giving them 5367 isn't the normal process, and I was concerned at FAMPO that there could be questions about that. So that's why basically with the 125 for the future, I'm basically proposing to lower that by that figure, and then kind of basically upfront that funding
Then take the
for 23.
5367 off the 125 in the future, and drop it down to another project or something, and then, well, let's just swap out the 5367 and be done with it.
Works for me.
Do it.
So just to be clear, you want us to find another project that can take FY 27 money in?
Market Street is what we will use, and we will allocate that HIP money that is in the regionally significant project, and we will remove that same amount in CMAQ and allocate that amount to the GW Ride Connect project, so they have their funds.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Sure. We have to vote. Yes.
Good. Okay, that takes care of that one.
You're welcome, Chairman. Thank you.
Welcome.
The other question we had was, fully funding 11 with funds that are allocated to 13, both Spotsylvania projects. Can I just get an indication if you're happy or unhappy with that amendment?
And this is just a funding swap, correct?
So it's a funding swap from one Spotsylvania project to another Spotsylvania project.
Okay.
And just to add on to that, the 110,987, basically for the Route 208 Drive, that's actually needed for the entrance, basically, that the VA has on Hood Drive.
The VA clinic.
You know, whereas the Route 1 Market Street project is an important project, but it's not actually needed for the VA to open. And the VA basically is trying to open in early 2024. And that project, basically for Route 208 Hood Drive, basically has a late 2023 completion date scheduled. I think it's like November. And just the cost increase on that was something that came recently, I guess it was like early April, when it came too late for the Spotsylvania County budget process. We already adopted a budget, so we're not in a position basically to make a change with that. Whereas with Route 1 Market Street, potentially in the next budget round, we could put more money on that if we need to.
And what years are you swapping?
I mean, I guess just this could be a Susan question.
Or you're just doing the whole dollars, doesn't matter about the year?
We want to kind of fully fund 11 at the expense of 13.
So it has to be previous or 24, it seems like, and there's some in 20, yeah, so previous to 24, you would, can you stop scrolling?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so
It would take,
it doesn't really matter to us kind of what funding works best as
This one.
programming.
So you're gonna take money from 13 to put it on to 11?
Yes.
So it would have to be previous
previous or 23, so it'd be one of these 4 sources here, or the,
And then-
and put it on
This
this.
is, but let's say that this one is going to add, when's the show? Market Street?
They're both going to add in November of this year.
Right. So there's a possibility the bids are coming in a little bit on the high side, guys.
Yep.
Just to let you know. I mean,
We're shocked.
exit 126 came in, you know.
What percentage are you seeing, like about 10, 20% over engineer's estimate?
Oh, gosh, it was, that came in, well, look at the numbers right now.
50%.
I'm looking at the percentage right now. So,
We're running 8 to 12% inflation right now.
yeah, and it's coming in, it was supposed to be 9 million,
Imagine if we
and it came in at 13.
wow. Imagine if we get 8 to 12% staff salary increments to meet inflation, right? Can't have that, right? Could never have that. So, does anybody have a problem with us doing the switch from project number 13 to project number 11 in previous funding and FY 23 funding, both being Spotsylvania projects?
It's 919,625 is the deficit on number 11.
So will that then not fully fund Market Street?
Market Street is overfunded by $1.2 million, so there will be access.
Yeah, they refunded.
Okay.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it will stay that way and put it.
Yeah, all bets are off what's going to happen in December when you get your quotes in, but we need to make this list now because it's got to go to the C2B.
So no issue, I just think for all these projects when we're doing the funding swap, is that when they do come in high, because it's gonna come in high, that we're reallocating dollars to projects, I would just say for Spotsylvania and the city and Stafford too, just remember that you remove this money. So if you have a deficit, and we go through the process of looking at other projects, we need to look at all other projects. Because my fear is that you move the money and then you need another $500,000. Well, you already took your money from your project, so that's the only piece I would just.
I understand
That's
that
understood.
completely.
Both of these are being bid at the same time.
Right.
So we should know if there's if like one comes in high and one comes in low, that we could evenly balance it out this way. Meaning we wouldn't be taking any money from any other project, we would just be balancing it between the two projects.
You're gonna have one Paul that's gonna be bid at the same time on, Mine Road at the same time. The candidate's companion project is under estimate right now. That's gonna bid at the same time as well.
I mean, something we might want to investigate, and I've just thought of this now, so there might be a problem with doing it technically, but we might want to think in the future of grouping a particular jurisdiction's projects together. Because then all your projects are in the same group, and there might be a way that, like, if one is overfunded and one is underfunded, there could be within one jurisdiction, a swap of funding like that, so it doesn't affect the other jurisdictions. I'm not proposing it now, because we've got to think through all the unintended consequences of that, but it might be something we want to think about in the future. So that Fredericksburg projects are all together, and you can shift between those projects when something like that happens, when one goes up and another one goes down, and we don't have to have a big mess. But I'm not suggesting it right now. We need to first think through the unintended consequences.
I think this is fine, so I'm good with moving forward. Grouping can be a challenge because, for example, if Spotsylvania had a project that they needed to do now and we could wait a year, I would be happy to swap funds with Spotsylvania, or Stafford or anybody else. So, I think that's one thing. Grouping can cause a challenge if we are delayed in a project, we can swap with another jurisdiction. But does this need a vote, or is this just a discussion for?
No, what we are asking is when we finished all of these discussions, we're going to ask you to endorse
The plan.
the plan as amended by all of these little amendments that we're doing. So Jordan is writing very detailed notes, and I'm asking you at each step, is this step agreeable?
Agreed.
So that when we get to the end, you then have a resolution you endorse the resolution to adopt the list as amended by these specific amendments you're making.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that other project that's also being, that's totally funded, sponsored. So, that's another option too, if it is to balance all three of them out, it might just be moving money between all three.
So right now, we're working on the cost estimates we have right now. Anything can happen after the policy committee votes this through, right? These cost estimates can change any day. We can't, in this meeting, deal with all of the potential that when it happens, we deal with it when it happens.
I'm good to move forward. If this is Spotsy's request, I don't have any issue.
Great. I think we're good with that one. Thank you. 10, we're going to leave because it's finished construction, but there's still invoices that may be in the pipeline, so we're going to just leave that one alone where it is and not do anything new to it. Mr. Chair, if we'll take any other questions on this item, and when we've finished all the questions, then we'll ask for endorsement of the list as amended by all of the things that Jordan is keeping on the list as we discussed them.
So were there any other questions for Jordan or Ian that's on the list? So I'll say, hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve with the changes we've discussed.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks very much, everybody, and thanks to Jordan. We have done, I think, a great job, because what we've done this year is we've taken the money we got, except for the new money for FY27, and we've tried to fully fund as many of our existing projects as possible to get them into construction. I think that was the right thing to do, and we look forward to all of you coming up with your new projects, which we look forward to seeing between October and January. So please do start work on your new projects. You need to look at cost estimates, you need to draw a little diagram for us of where the project is, et cetera, et cetera. Please don't forget that we're coming back to you in the fall to start the next round. And it looks, Mr. Chair, to me like, depending on what the next financial year's allocation is from VDOT, it looks like we may have somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 million to allocate in one shot the next round. So please do come up with some good projects.
Great. Okay, the next item is Smart Scale Round 5 update with Carrie Barber.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so as you know, we're moving ahead with this. Right now we are in May, and VDOT is working on our pre-applications, and we're asking questions and getting it all sorted out. Next slide. As you also know, we have to remove one application from each list. These are the two lists for GWRC and FAMPO, and the boards will take your advice on this slide.
Wait, before you move on that slide. You are going to make that decision at your next meeting.
Yes.
So please start the discussion today about which ones you're going to pull off the two lists, bearing in mind that King George and Caroline are also part of the GWRC list, but don't have a project on the list currently. But please do have that discussion starting today, because next TAC meeting, we want a final decision from TAC as to what they're recommending be removed out of the 10. Thanks.
So can I just make a comment on the FAMPO list? So basically with Spotsylvania, we have a committee structure, basically when approving smart scale projects or anything transportation related. Our transportation committee basically has voted on the smart scale projects, and basically on the FAMPO list wants the Route 3 project removed. So I guess my question is, given that, I mean, could we actually have support today for the final 4 projects for FAMPO, so then VDOT will know what those 4 are and be able to maybe better direct resources for those without having to wait another month?
So that obviously is up to all the jurisdictions to make that, and of course the final decision is actually the policy committee, not the TAC. So a recommendation could be made today, certainly, but the decision is obviously the policy committee's final decision. So it's up to the jurisdictions, and we don't make any comments on that now. And we could take a recommendation if you have one today, but.
Just a VDOT comment is that we have that information. We will go forward with that regardless of what decision, whether you make a decision here or not. We know what the county has said, so now we can go with that. So it doesn't affect, how we'll do it.
Yeah, Mike and I are good with that from the city, so.
I don't have an issue with that.
Well, if all the jurisdictions and VDOT then are happy with that, I think that, Mr. Chair, I would ask you to then just make a recommendation officially to endorse the 4 today, and then we are happy to take that to the policy committee. The GWRC one we'd have to do next time.
Right. So I guess, Carrie, can you please go back to the list? So the motion would be basically with the FAMPO list to recommend that basically all of the projects be advanced with the exception of the Route 3 Gordon Road to I-95 West Ramps pipeline project. And also I'll just add with that Spotsylvania is open to projects for that based in the next round of smart scale, just not in this round of smart scale. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Great, thank you. That makes our job actually easier, and Carrie can prepare a resolution for the policy committee so that actually they can take action now, which makes that one easier. And then next month we'll deal with the GWRC list, but Stephen, there you have your answer. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Anybody want to volunteer to take one off the other list?
I was about to say, none of them screened out by chance today, so.
Is any screened out?
I said, did any of them did? No, I don't imagine they did. I think they all screened in, so.
Stephen, did they all screen in?
The screening process is still underway.
Oh dear, well that doesn't help. Is there anyone that staff particularly doesn't like, or the city particularly doesn't like on the GWRC list?
Staffer would be content removing the Fredericksburg projects.
One day, we don't know which day it will be.
I suspect that means that we have to leave it for the next meeting, but please do talk to your jurisdictions. We have to remove one, so please do discuss it.
But you know how we're gonna cap that in the GWRC meeting? We're gonna say Stafford was against the Spotsylvania project. That way, we get some leverage.
All right, well, there we go.
Let's focus on the GWRC list projects so they can take a better look at those. help them make a decision. So, first we have US 1 Lay Hill intersection improvements. This one was in on,
Yeah, I think we just got some revenue sharing for this one, and looking in the draft SYP, it looks like we've got about $30-something million on that one, so, or 2.3 million in revenue sharing, so I think we definitely want to keep this one on the list.
okay, so you'll have some leverage funds.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Can you, just also, when we have the next meeting, can you make sure we note all those items? Like if it's gotten additional funding, like revenue sharing, I think that will be important for the group discussion. Because I just wanted to note that, because
Certainly.
we vote, it's gonna be like, I'm not taking off my project, and you say you've got revenue sharing, it makes it harder for the group.
Yeah.
Great. And this is another Stafford project, turn lane improvements at the intersection of Route 1, Escamilla Hill Road, and American Legion Road. Anything else to say about that one, Al?
No, 100% smart scale funding on that one.
Okay.
It's one of those pipeline projects.
Great. Warrenton Road, sidewalk, portion of sidewalk here on the south side of Warrenton Road from Old Forge Lane to Lendell Lane. There's a lot of pedestrian activity in that area. Is there anything else to add to that?
No.
And so then Dixon Street, this is going to be a section of shared use path, turned around a little bit, but this is the park, this is a medical building, there's shared use path here that will connect to shared use path that connects to the park and into the city, and then there'll be a sidewalk on the frontage road there. Originally there was going to be a shared use path, but it would take away so much parking from the medical facility, so they decided to go with an alternative design.
Gary, I wanted to ask a question about that. Like, is there any possibility that the parking kind of that the site has along kind of Dixon Street could be relocated to the back of the building?
To this area?
So, right, so then you could have a shared use path along Dixon Street, just because it seems like with the route, what's going to happen is the users are just going to use the sidewalk.
They are.
They're not going to use the shared use path. That's kind of the circuitous path through the park.
Who owns that green?
This is the city of Fredericksburg, right? Yes,
Part of the park. So you're then talking about an land swap?
It's not really a swap, it's a park. So you've got the,
You can't really take a park
yeah.
for commercial parking area.
I mean, even if the city approves it? Even
The
if
dimensions of that playing field make it pretty difficult. It would take it away from being a playing field to some just open green, Paul. I don't know if that's something we're really looking at. And about this kind of circuitous route, yeah, some people going straight up the road will take the sidewalk, but with the bigger plan that we have in place, hanging a right on the shared use path, if you are a traveler from Spotsylvania, your trail that's coming up, going into the city, which I think a significant amount of the users will be, it will actually be the most straightforward path to get on that trail, connect to what we call the Dixon Park Connector, which is one of our projects, and then come into the southern end of the city, because you've got to go in that direction anyway. That's why we were okay with it. We talked about this one a lot. Thank you, Carrie, for all your work on it. That's what, that's why we ultimately decided, okay, we're good going in that direction.
Yeah, when we actually walked it as a group, and if you actually walk it, it actually makes sense, just for the group. It actually has good flow, so it's less deathly as the main road is, so.
That's good to know.
that makes me feel better.
Yeah. Good. All right, next slide. So then we have Lafayette Boulevard roadway and bike ped improvements. I believe Spotsy is reducing the scope somewhat on this one because the cost estimate came in a little high, but it's several sections of sidewalk that connect gaps, and also transit improvement at Wellington Woods. It's going to be a new stop to help pair with the existing southbound stop, and then turn lane improvements at Greenwich Drive. Do you have anything else to say on that one, Paul?
So the one comment on this one, I think we might need just a short kind of meeting with the city, FAMPO, SPDOT, talk about kind of the scope. It seems like with the draft cost estimate being almost $26 million, also that dropping off the sidewalk piece in Spotsy will help with that. But I think that on the city side, something probably needs to be scaled back too, just to get it to a point where it could be kind of a project that would be competitive in smart scale.
Let's get together.
So we will need to do that in the next couple of weeks, so that by the June meeting, it's all squared away. And I'm sure Stephen will tell us that he wants it even sooner than that for his staff to make adjustments to the cost estimates and all that.
And I'll say, if it's okay with everyone, we could just meet maybe after this meeting today, briefly. I mean, at least to have an initial discussion.
We're supposed to meet for 10 minutes anyway to go through those slides. So, I mean, if you want to start, then it's up to you guys when you want to do it.
We can start. If you're good, we can start today.
Start the discussion, okay.
Fine. Okay, and then we can go through these if you wish, but the decision's already been made on which ones are going to go forward. Please don't. All right then. Are there any other questions?
Don't speak for the group.
Okay, so, VDOT is hard working with VDH on estimates for the pipeline project applications to help us make decisions on those. And everything, one thing I want to call your attention to, I've sent out a request for economic development data to all of the localities. Let me know any questions you have, but that's a lot of work, so the sooner the better to get started on that.
Please do start on that. We now know already one of the projects that's been removed, so we don't have to bother with economic data on that one. But we have to have that, and it's quite a lot of, data and documents that we need to collect from you to finish the final application.
And beyond that, we're just working through to July 28th.
There we go.
Do you have any other questions? Comments?
Any other questions for Carrie? Thank you. All right, so next item is a 7D, basically endorse resolution 2232, approving the fiscal year 2023 planning work program. So I guess I actually had a question just with regards to the FAMPO urbanized area. Like, when are we going to know the information on that? And is there the potential, like, if all of FAMPO is part of the Washington urbanized area, we would have to maybe do some additional work on just various aspects of what FAMPO does?
So there is that question hanging. The website of the Census Bureau says that we will, in late summer, get initial indications of the urbanized areas. However, I believe that it's not a one-step process. There's like appeals and all sorts of other things. Secondly, the criteria that they're using, remember they adjusted the criteria. We all screamed blue murder, that that's a terrible idea, and everybody around the country was unhappy. They have now made adjustments to those initial criteria and published the adjusted criteria. But when you look at the adjusted criteria, in most cases, it's going to have the impact of the full criteria they proposed, which means that my kind of gut feel, back of the envelope calculation is that we're going to lose population. The amount that the population has increased is going to be offset by the change in the criteria, so that it's going to shrink again. We may end up with even less than we currently have, which will affect where that boundary falls. So I very, very much doubt we're going to have the significant changes that some of us hope for and others of us are horrified might occur. I don't actually think there's going to be a significant boundary change. It's just the massive change in the criteria offsets the population increase, so you end up with this negligible effect, and could even actually shrink the urban boundary depending on how they do the counting. And we won't know that until they publish the first draft, but it's unfortunate for us. We could have seen the gap between the Fredericksburg urbanized area, Fredericksburg-Spotsy urbanized area, and the Stafford urbanized area close or come close together. And within that mile limit, they gave the limit, which is it 2.5 miles or 3 miles. That limit was adjusted, and the urbanized area calculation removed all the what do you call those inlets, the little waterways, all that stuff's been excluded. So your population is likely to even shrink. So I gut feel it's not going to have a significant change. If it does, though, and there is a significant change, then of course we do have to revise. Well, anyway, once the once the map is published, the rules is that FAMPO, together with VDOT, have to have a process to adjust the official FAMPO urban area or the FAMPO study area, and we will engage that process. But it's going to take a while before that settles. We'll get an initial indication at the end of the summer. Do you want us to put a line item in the UPWP to say we can?
Yeah, I think we should have it in case it happens.
Okay.
I say if it happens, it would be a significant activity to address. I'll just say from a regional funding standpoint, basically there would be the potential that the STBG and the TAP funding would be region-wide, and basically the prioritization methodologies for that might have to be, well, I mean, they definitely would need to be updated. Potentially with CMAQ, maybe something would need to be done as well. But just something to cover that in case it does happen.
Okay, I'll sort that out. Let Becky finish her presentation, and then I will make the 2 points that I think we should adjust.
Great. Highlights in the fiscal year 23 Unified Work Program are, we've got the FAMPO Vision Plan later today on the agenda. Mr. Ollis will share an upcoming survey to be sent regarding that. The Freight Summit, we now have a date for that of September 29th, and working on the planning for that. That's in the FY-UPWP. The FRED Transit Strategic Plan, as well as 2 major studies, the East-West Mobility Study, the VCR Trail Study. 2 items that are out of the fiscal year 23 plan that are currently in the 22 plan. We have removed the 610 operational study because those funds do not run through our books. That's being managed by Stafford County. And also the GW Ride Connect strategic plan, since that does not run through our books, we've just removed it from that plan. We did add and really appreciate comments received from Paul as well as Linda Lusut of VDOT. Linda provided a great 1-page summary of the impacts that staff will need to deal with regard to the infrastructure bill. And then, Paul asked us, and really good input, we now have a comment that an annual update to the CLRP will be processed by staff if requested. What the wording of that does is it emphasizes that 1 time a year max is when amendments would be bundled for potential CLRP amendments, and that time impact noted therein. So very good comment there. And then as we close this agenda item, we'll talk about language to incorporate the impact of the census on the urbanized areas once that is published.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I then suggest we put language in on page 29. I suggest we add a bullet point 13, which would say FAMPO staff in conjunction with state partners will review the metropolitan planning area once the census urbanized area maps are published. And that gives us a bullet point in there to formally do that process. And Mr. Chair, I would suggest, with the indulgence of the TAC, 1 additional point. I thought about this over the weekend, and it's not something we would definitely finish in this financial year, but something we should start, I think, discussing. And that would be on that same page. I suggest adding a bullet 14. Let me read it, and then if you're happy with it, we can include it. My suggested bullet point 14 is, in conjunction with localities, FAMPO would work to identify locations for transit-oriented development. That doesn't mean we have to do it in every case, but it just means it allows us to do that, because I know often VDOT says you're working on a project and it's nowhere in your UPWP, and then we have to process an amendment. So to avoid having to process an amendment, if we do get there, I'm suggesting we just add some language to allow us to do it. And then, you know, if a locality says, they don't want it, we won't do it. If a locality says, we do want to work with you on this, we can do it, but at least we have language in there to allow it. Would that be okay with the TAC?
Yes, and I'll say basically on point 13, could we also include just to make any updates needed basically for regional funding programs if the urbanized area changes?
What do you have in mind?
I mean, that would be like with the STBG, if it's region-wide, instead of just for North Stafford, but the TAP is just North Stafford.
Okay, so then maybe we just add to that bullet point and adjust regional funding as necessary.
Right.
Is that okay?
Maybe regional funding prioritization.
Regional funding prioritization as necessary.
Want me to read the two?
Say that again?
Want me to read the two statements?
Can you?
Mm-hmm. On page 29 and new number 13, FAMPO staff, in conjunction with state partners, will amend the
Metropolitan planning area.
all right, hold on. And adjust regional funding prioritization as necessary.
I would say adjust the metropolitan planning area the word I'm thinking of.
You're just trying to do it to reflect the,
I'm just saying, I'm just wanting to say after
Yeah.
the census releases the urbanized area maps.
Maybe it's two sentences there. Hold on a minute. Let me read that again.
Because we can't do anything until we have the maps.
And maybe there's another point about the funding. We'll read this one sentence and get it straight. FAMPO staff, in conjunction with state partners, will amend the metropolitan
Planning area.
metropolitan planning area after review of the census-related urban area maps.
Urbanized area maps.
Okay. And then we had another thought about regional funding.
You have to say, and adjust regional funding prioritization
methodology
Period.
as needed.
Period.
All right, I'll be able to read that in more minutes too. Number 14, in conjunction with localities, FAMPO will work to identify locations for transit-oriented development.
Yeah. Any other questions from anybody?
I'll just make a comment on the transit-oriented development, just because I don't want to add stuff to the UPWP that, after we've kind of gone through the process. I do think it's clarifying language as opposed to new language. I'm looking through the document right now, so I do want to put that out there just in case people add stuff in the future when you're supposed to, that I feel like the language you provided is more clarifying with some of the activities that are already done as opposed to new language. So I just want to...
Thanks. And if you could just pull up page 9, where the summary of the new that page. Folks, just the explanation on this page is that this is the summary of the new requirements in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And we don't yet have the metrics by which the federal government will monitor our attention to these items and also what they're expecting of us in the detail. So, for example, we have to try to link our new transportation infrastructure plans with housing, but they don't tell us how to do that. Do we negotiate with the localities? Do we send out a survey? Do we just have to add pictures on the map of where the residential housing is? What exactly does that mean? So what we've put in is the language that VDOT has sent us, which gives you a summary of what's required, but we will have to wait for the federal government departments to send us how exactly we're being expected to implement it and what the metrics will be for measuring us on those items. It's unclear at this stage of the technical detail of what we'll have to do. So we're just putting in the language to enable us to work on it, and when the federal government gives us more information, we'll bring it to you. We're just putting the language in to enable us to do whatever's required.
I really appreciate Linda, boiling it down from, many, many pages of federal guidelines. Thank you, Linda.
So I had one other kind of minor comment, and this basically is on page 28, but basically with the travel demand model, there's a reference like in 11A, basically that kind of FAMPA would continue to work with VDOT on kind of the travel demand model, kind of version 5.15. And I think that was actually completed a couple years ago. And there's another reference, I guess, on the top of
Is that the first, what's out of date, Paul?
I guess my question, like, is there some, well, the version I think is completed, but I guess the question, like, is there a new update that's, there's a new update, okay.
So can we just make a note, staff, to just take out version 5.1.5, just
That's a carryover of the old
just say to update. VDOT modeling department has informed us that the legislation governing updating travel demand models has changed, and they are therefore required to do the updates more frequently, and they would need to start at least the new update in FY23, and they would need FAMPO staff to provide them with data, and one of those data is any new roads or bridges or tunnels that have been built since the last update, which have to be added to the map. Also, for example, the Spotsylvania train station, it is now in the model, but as an add-on. It's not actually in the original design of the last update. So now we would like to change it from an add-on to being a formal, integral part of the model. So there are things like that which have to be done, but they've told us that in FY23 they now have to do it, whereas they were thinking of just starting in FY23 and doing it the following year. They now have an earlier deadline because the legislation has changed. And FAMPO staff are required to collect the data for them on new projects. So it does have to be in our work program as an item this year. But we'll just all take out version 5.15. That's obviously a carryover.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. I'll say if there are no other comments, I'll make a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
We're down to 7E, basically the FY21-24 TIP modifications with Jordan Chandler.
Yeah, so these are just modifications, so no action is needed on either of these items. We got a list of 4 projects from DRPT that have updated funding sources once they had published their draft SIPs. And then the other thing is from Fred Regional Transit. They also have a request to change the funding that they had from FY23 back to FY22. So that's the update for both of these. They're, again, administrative and no action is needed, just for informational purposes.
This is just a question, like, is this the same as a TIP adjustment?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions for Jordan? Okay, thank you very much. Next item is 7F, the 2050 LRTP goals and objectives requested amendment.
Yes, the CTAC, we actually received public comments during the public comment period that affected the goals and objectives of the LRTP from the from the disabled community, as well as, and what you have in your packet are the raw comments. Jane Leeds provided comments in an email regarding connectivity to residential neighborhoods and transit stops, and to improve the connection. For example, when you have a transit stop, make sure there's a way to get to the opposite side of the street. She also provided a list of locations for consideration of audible signals. So the CTAC, realizing that an amendment to the LRTP is a big deal, we didn't want to press to do it immediately. In the CTAC agenda that's online now, there's a letter to localities, to the GWRC localities and to VDOT, where we've done a strike-through of the goals and objectives to incorporate the accessibility input from the disabled community. And as far as audible signals, we've found an NCHRP report that tells you where you should and shouldn't put audible signals in conjunction with design. So if you want to go to the CTAC agenda, their item in their upcoming May 11th meeting, item 8B2, is a letter to localities, to the county administrators and the city manager, and to VDOT, Marcy Parker, with a strike-through version of the goals and amendments objectives, just saying, hey, when and if we ever do an annual update to the LRTP, just know that here's what we're recommending. And in the meantime, if you can use these as you, do your designs, that would be great. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I think the point about this is that we should be responsive to disabled folks in our communities, in our planning, and the suggestions were that we amend the goals in the LRTP because they don't specifically talk about this. It's so long back that the policy committee adopted the goals that we didn't want to, like 2 weeks before adopting the full LRTP, now go and mess with the goals because it would require a process. So what I've suggested to the CTAC is that we take these proposals and boil them into the next time we do an amendment to the LRTP. So in other words, we keep them on file, we work on the text of what should be changed so that it's ready to go, and then when we have to amend the CLRP in the next year, or we get a request for a different change, we put them all together. So we do a once a year or once every so often update to the LRTP, not a whole lot of updates, which makes it a very messy process. So that's, I think, the approach that we're taking with FAMPO is to say thanks very much. We'll respond to the people who send in the comments saying, we've taken note, we will plan to adjust our goals and objectives in the LRTP the next time we actually do an update, and we've designed some amendments which Becky has already.
That's good. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Becky. The next item is 7G, the FAMPO Future Vision Survey with Ian and Coley.
So Coley, I believe, is on leave today, so I'm just going to do this. The idea is we want to talk about a FAMPO vision, and I've started this discussion at the policy committee, and it's not for the staff to go in a dark room and tell FAMPO what its vision should be. This is a collaborative process where all the members of FAMPO committees should be involved in the process. And the outcome is to develop the FAMPO vision. And I asked this question I want to do this process because the vision should really lead to your policy. So if our policy is to focus on soft shoulders in the rural areas and make that a massive issue, how does that relate to the overall vision of what we're trying to do? So my idea is to try and develop a short, not a 50-page or 100-page document, but like a 5 or 10-page document at most. This is what the FAMPO vision is for the next 10 years or something. So what we're doing is sending a survey out to every member that is on a FAMPO committee. And we've done the numbers. There's some duplicates of people who sit on more than one committee, and it's about 105 people, roughly, that we will send the survey to. And the idea is to find out what your opinions are on what FAMPO should be doing. So we're going to send it to the policy committee members, to yourselves, to the CTAC, to the BPAC, and then put that all together. It's a quick survey. We're going to send it to you in the next week on an email with the link, and we'll give you a unique number, so you don't have to fill your name in anywhere. You can pull the survey in on SurveyMonkey and just put your number, your number 352, and you put that in, so it's anonymous. Obviously, we will then collate it and present it to everybody. This is what the members of the FAMPO committee think about FAMPO and think about FAMPO's vision and what we should be doing. And then out of that, staff will then work on a vision document together with the research, right? So it won't only be opinions of FAMPO members. We'll couple that with academic research and other research on what metropolitan planning organizations are all about and what they should be doing and what trends in the current situation are. For example, one question I put in there is, when the gas tax money is no longer enough to fund the roads, and you might laugh at that statement, where should we find the money? Because that's a policy decision. So your vision says we should have enough roads for whatever. Well, then what happens when the tax money runs out, right? Because we make policy decisions as FAMPO on how to raise money, how to spend money, how to prioritize the money that we do get. Well, what happens when the highway improvement money dries up because the gas tax gets less and less and less as electric vehicles come on? So I put one question in there for us to think about. What's the future look like? I know people across the United States are looking at that question, right? So that's the kind of thing. If you can get your survey done by the 20th of May, it's only 10 questions. It's not a very long survey. It won't take you very long to fill in. Some of them are just multiple choice. Pick one of the 5 or rank 1 to 5 of these options. After you've done the survey, we're going to compile the data to present to the FAMPO committees, and then we'll look at academic research as well. Next slide. Well, there you go. Any questions?
I have one. For the question that has to do with how we're going to fund something, right? Are you giving people like a multiple choice? Or are you going to give them an opportunity to be opinionated?
For that particular question, I'm leaving as right long form what you think. I'm not giving you the options. I'm saying, well, you tell me what you think, right? And VDOT members are also members of our committee, so I hope that they will also give their opinion. So anybody who's a member or an alternate of the FAMPO committees, and there's about 105 of you all, I'm not a member, so I don't get, and then we've allowed the 6 staff to also each submit their one survey. So it'll be the 6 FAMPO staff plus all of you. And I'm really interested to see what people think the future is going to look like, or what it should look like, or what the problems are that we should be addressing. Might surprise some of us about what each other think about this thing, but it's anonymous, so I won't say, Jamie says, the hell with your bridge.
Actually, Jamie says no.
we won't do that. We won't embarrass any individuals. It'll be neutral. So that's that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. All right, so we're coming to the end of the agenda. Is there any correspondence?
So apart from those items that you saw from social media and others responding to our draft UPWP, we did get that letter from Federal Highways, but it is addressed to the policy committee. So I gave it to the policy committee, but it is available for you all. I'm just not sure if we put it online yet.
I think we just sent it to the policy.
Send it to the policy committee members, but I think perhaps, Jordan, we can just email it to the TAC members as well. But it just is their comments on the changing of the policy committee bylaws, not the TAC bylaws. So send it to the policy committee members. And that's all the correspondence I'm aware of. I don't know if any other staff members are aware of any other correspondence. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Are there any staff reports?
Jordan?
I do have one, and Becky alluded to it. We are having our Freight Summit on September 29th, so if you guys could hold like the middle of the afternoon on that date. We're aiming from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., so that's the rough timeline. But we'll send out invitations and all that in the coming months.
What was that date again? September?
29th is a Thursday.
Yeah, what time? Morning, afternoon?
10
a.m. to 2:30. And it's up in Central Park at the Germanna.
It's the Germanna Workforce, Fred Cat location.
Okay.
Next up on land.
Do you actually send out like a save the date for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to. And they've kindly given us, well, we're finding out, but they're not charging us to use the venue, but we have to give an in-kind contribution, and we're still trying to work out what that actually means. So we'll let you know.
And one question, so I know you guys are in the, this the planning stages of it, so are you gonna invite industry to that meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're setting aside a minimum of 25 slots for freight companies, CSX, anybody moving freight in the region or through the region or to the region. So, you know, Amazon Prime's facility in Stafford and all those kinds of people will be invited. The FRA is helping us to locate companies that do move freight, but we'll gladly take any suggestions from the TAC about a company you think we should invite.
Well, I was just going to recommend Virginia Economic Development Partnership. It's a state agency. They would have a list of all the businesses that are shipping, and also the ones that are served by rail and others. So, yeah.
Great.
I don't have a contact for you, but somebody there would be able to.
OIP, fantastic. OIP has agreed to attend and participate. Jatenda is going to come, which we think is great because OIP are, after all, some of the people we want to influence with the outcomes of our summit. So we're really glad they're actually going to be a participant in the summit. And if VDOT could start putting their thinking caps on as to who from VDOT you'd like to have there, we're very happy to have Marty Parker or any of Michelle or Stephen or whoever. It's up to you guys to decide who you want to send along to that. We'd certainly like to have VDOT represented as well. And I think it's a good opportunity for those companies to come and talk to the people who are making the transportation decisions, right? So the counties, we will invite you to send a transportation person and economic development person. Next week, I put your name on the list. I hope you will be in attendance from your county. So, you know, really, I hope that the freight companies see it as value added, that they get a chance to speak in the presence of the people who are going to make decisions about roads and rail in their area. We will invite DRPT as well because freight rail.
Sounds great. Any questions for Ian? Okay. We're on to member reports. Are there any member reports?
I've got just one from Stafford. Brandon Brown has resigned from service with Stafford County, so we are in the process of looking for a new transportation planner.
Sorry to hear that.
Yep. So I'll be picking up his work in the meantime.
Will you ask your county to send us an amendment when you've made your decision about or removing Brandon from the list and adding someone, etc.? That's sad.
Are there any other member reports? Okay. So the next meeting is on June 6th at 9:30. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.